What's up guys, it's finally Friday, which means the end of my deck profile week of all the new rulers. The last one is the Observer. This is by far my favorite ruler in the set. I think it's slowly starting to become my favorite ruler in the entire game. Just to like nerd out for a complete second, for some reason, like when I play this deck, I think of Avatar, like the Last Airbender Avatar, like not the Legend of Korra or the movie, but just the season of the Last Airbender where Azula was fighting Zuko. And they're like having an Agni Kai, and it's like there's just fire everywhere and everything's burning, and there's just like lightning and stuff. That's literally what I feel like every time I play this deck. I'm just spamming thunders, and like there's all these like, you know, all these fire cards just going everywhere. I'm searching everything with Rukh Egg and Guinevere, and like Pricia's shooting fireballs and stuff. So yeah, I don't know why that happens. I don't know where that like thought process comes from, but it's just so amazing. So I decided to name the deck Agni Kai because it's kind of the same concept of you trying to completely shut down and burn your opponent down before you get burned down by them. Of course, most, you know, it's always a fight between your life, but because of the thunders and everything and the fact that it's kind of spammable, it kind of gave me that feel, so I decided to just name it Agni Kai. It's just like the funnest deck I've ever played. Like, I don't know what it is about this deck. I'm in love with it. I know Matt's been talking about it a lot lately too, so there's something about this kind of deck that all of us like fanboys for like the creative side of rulers and stuff, I guess, like, because I know Matt typically likes like Kaguya 1.0 as well, which I'm a really big fan of, so maybe we just like the same kind of rulers and this just stuck out to both of us, so I'm really happy about that. But to get into the actual deck, so the ruler is of course the Observer. His judgment cost is 2 red and 12 void, which, you know, everyone's like, what do you mean it costs 14 to deactivate? That's impossible. But the continuous effect is you may pay 1 less to play this ability for each card in your removed area. Please note that, of course, because it costs 2 red and 12 colorless, that means that even if you have 14 removed from game, it won't cost 2 less of the fire. It'll just cost the 12 less, so you always have to pay at least 2 red to deactivate. And the art on this card is really nice too. Normally it's always like some like masculine, like, okay, like look at Melgis. He's just like, oh, I'm Melgis, I'm gonna kill everything, because he's all like buff and scary. But this guy is like this, like, you know, like a librarian or something. So, well, I guess he's an observer, but you know, he looks like he's like stuck in his books and everything, kind of like the way Grimm was. But and then you get to this side, and then you get to this side, and he's just like some like demon summoning, time controlling arsonist guy that's ready to just destroy everything. And this side is the side I really like. It's just so fun. So it's 1 discard into your field, search your main deck for a card named Blazing Metropolis Bales Savara, and reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your main deck. I don't actually play that card. It's the field spell that's kind of like Necronomicon. I think it's like slow and clunky and just doesn't really work well with the deck. But it's the passive effects I like on this card. So resonators you control gain swiftness, target attack, and first strike. The swiftness particularly on this is extremely important. The first strike is complete overkill and just makes it so much better. And the target attack is just like as a just in case option almost, but the swiftness is what makes this so great because of Verdandi, which I'll get into later. And then his god art is Total Recall. It's 2 red and 2 colorless, and it says this card deals 100 damage for each resonator. For each it deals 100 damage to each J/resonator your opponent controls for each card in your removed area. Then you may put any number of cards from your removed from play area into your graveyard. I never really happened to put cards back. At one point, I wanted to play Necro Valley so I could discard it, because I do use a lot of discard fodder in this deck. And then even if it gets removed from game, I would just put it back late game. But it felt kind of greedy, and I didn't really want to like overextend into having all these combo pieces. So I don't really focus too much on having cards back in the graveyard. I just like the fact that like if you deactivate this, especially in the mirror, most of the time you can't deactivate and use your guard art around the same turn, because you typically deactivate around 5 stones. And so you can't flip and use the guard art. And in the mirror match, whoever deactivates this first totally wins, because if your opponent tries to deactivate theirs, on the following turn you're just going to wipe their entire board, and it's just going to clear out everything. Because if you have 12 removed from game, that's 1200 damage to every card they control, including their J-Ruler, which I think is absolutely insane. Like, that's just a total board wipe. And at first when I read it, I wasn't like impressed by it, but it definitely actually shows how strong it is in play. Like, this ruler in general just like blew me away. I never thought it was going to be this good, and it's just absolutely amazing. And then also shout out to Lumia for being the original remove from play ruler. I had to have her in here because there was no way I was not going to use her mat when she is removed from game to me. Everyone knows how big of a Lumia fan I was, so I think that's also why I like this deck so much. It kind of reminds me of like the glory days. So moving on to the stone lineup, I run 4 blasting waves. Kind of the way I played my primogenitor deck, where it was like the whole pass loop idea I had, where you just keep recurring your turn 3 play, and you keep using Pitch Black Moon to get Pricia or Feetsing. This deck can also loop through Pricia quite easily, so I thought with the addition of Thunder and Pricia, you can choose either if you want, you know, more Resonators to add to your hand, or maybe 1 Pricia and 1 Thunder with Ifrit, and that way you would just constantly have pressure on your opponent, as well as just being able to burn them. So I thought that would be a really good way to use this deck as well. And then 4 Scorched Bales. Scorched Bales is because I really wanted Soulhunt. I think Soulhunt generally in this meta is really good. I haven't been able to really use it because I haven't made any black decks this whole time. Even Primogenitor, I don't think I had a lot of black in it. So I've been waiting to use Soulhunt, I just haven't had the proper option. So I think Soulhunt's really good. And then I also side Barrier of Shadows. I really wanted to main it, but it didn't feel so well good mained in this deck, so I figured I'd just side it, and I have the zones for it, so why not? And then this is where this is kind of just like a me thing, but I ran 3 Moonshades. People will notice that this is now 11 stones. There's something about testing with this deck where like 2 Moonshades didn't feel like enough, because I think Hera is also really important in this deck. I can either use it on my own Deathscythe or use it on their opponent's Regalia, and you really want to... The whole idea of this deck is your early game is just entire setup, and your late game is where you go off like really crazy. There isn't a lot of rush cards that you see typically in red decks like Lancelot or Cthulhu or anything like that. So I needed a way to safely get to late game, and I think the combination of like Hera, Soulhunt, and those kind of cards that control the board, also Pricia's target attack is really good. I felt as though those were really important, and when I ran 2 Moonshades, I didn't see it enough where I was like 4-4-2, and I didn't see it enough for Hera, so I didn't have the access to the blue. And when I ran 4 Moonshades and 3 Blasting Waves and 3 Scorched Bales, I would double up on the Moonshades too much, and it would be costly too much on my life. So I decided to go 4-4-3, that way I still have a chance of seeing a second Moonshade if I need it, if I'm trying to use like a Foment of the World Tree and I don't have double green or anything like that, So I felt like the 11th stone was actually kind of really good in this deck. Like, I saw it enough now where it's like I always had it where I wanted it, but I didn't double up on it quite too frequently. So I know it's going to be kind of strange to some people. If you want, you can do 4-4-2, but I really think I like the access to Hera. I also have 1 Sign of the Future, which I particularly like to see kind of early if I get it with Guinevere, so I don't want to not have the option to play it, and I think setting it makes it a little too obvious. I guess you can maybe make your opponent think it's like a Memory of Flame or something, because I'm not playing that card, but I could see, I guess, somebody thinking that, but typically I just wanted access to certain cards, and I think the 11 stone actually really helps. I'm completely in love with the Resonator lineup for this deck because it looks like nothing's really going on, but you can't underestimate how amazing Verdandi is as a card. To start up, I have the 4 Guineveres. I like this art more, by the way. I think I've used the other ones before. I didn't like misplace them or anything. I just kind of got over the new one. I like that this one looks just a lot more appealing to me. But yeah, if you guys don't know, there's 2 different arts to Guinevere. This is just the same card, but from the older set. So I know a lot of people got into the game around Twilight Wanderer, so I didn't want anyone to get confused. This is just Guinevere, the Jealous Queen. So this is the most important card in the deck. You must mulligan to see this in your opening hand. It does seem like you might think that's kind of a bad strategy, but it fixes everything so quickly and helps you get to late game, so that's totally fine. The only card I'd keep in an opening hand that's not Guinevere is maybe like 1 Thunder if I don't have the Guinevere. That way I feel as though if my opponent does try to outpace me with something like Morgiana or anything like that, I could just Thunder it. But you literally, like, if I open 5 cards and it looks like a perfect hand, but Guinevere is not there, I will mulligan all 5 to see Guinevere. Like, it's way too important to see this card. For anyone that doesn't know what it does, you tap it to banish a Resonator, you draw 2 cards and then discard a card. This is extremely important because you thin through your deck as fast as you can and fill up your graveyard with Deathscythe. And then if your opponent tries to kill one of your cards, like let's say if you have a Pricia and you swing for 7 and you take out one of their Resonators. If you have a Guinevere on the field and on the opposing turn, your opponent knows they have to take care of Pricia, because if they don't, you'll be able to give her flying and just push for even more damage. And let's say your opponent goes, I'm going to Thunder Pricia. You can banish it for Guinevere. You still do the 500 to them for Pricia hitting the graveyard. You then draw 2 cards and then discard Deathscythe. And Deathscythe with Guinevere is just the most important play in this deck. Most of my remove actually comes from Deathscythe, which I'll explain when I get to it of why it's such a like just strong card. But once again, this is the most important card in the deck. Please mulligan to see it as early as you can. For Verdandi, Verdandi is the main actual win condition of this deck. It's the only keeper I played this quantity of. I don't play the 2-drop at all, and I think I only have one of the 3-drop. But this card is so underrated of how great it is. A lot of people are focusing on all the other keepers, and I just don't understand why this isn't being talked about enough. When this card enters the field, you may remove a card in your hand from the game, and if you do, you draw a card. So if you ever double up on Deathscythe and you don't really need any of the extra copies, I only run 4 because I want to see it as soon as possible. This is actually the perfect card to just get rid of any extra copy of Deathscythe, just to draw another card. You thin through your deck as much as you can, and then the continuous effect on this card is as long as this card, as long as this resonator, if you have 10 cards removed from the game, it gains +9/+9, so it makes it a 1000/1000, and it gains first strike. And why this is so crucial is because the other 2 keepers are kind of a higher cost. They're a 2-drop and a 3-drop, and I can't emphasize how important 1-drops are in this deck. You want to essentially have Ifrit on the field only when you want to banish it to add cards in to your hand. Like sometimes I'll have like Ifrit on the field and 5 mana open, and I'll just pass. And if my opponent happens to do something I want to counter, I'll banish it to add like a Sign of the Future and a Thunder to my hand, or a Thunder and a Pricia if I know I have to wait till next turn. Or you play very, very passively. You never want to just try to go off, particularly on your turn. I like playing really safe and just having Ifrit on the field and just banishing it during the end phase or during a play my opponent makes to try to like counter that play. And in late game, when you actually have 10 cards removed from game, if your opponent ends their turn and you have like the J-Ruler up, or you can deactivate next turn, on your draw, banishing Ifrit to add 2 of these to your hand, deactivating and playing 2 of them right away, and having 2 1000 beat sticks is absolutely insane. And it doesn't like mess with the amount of mana you have, because you always linger around 5 to 6. So it's easy to deactivate and play these in the same turn, whereas if you try to flood the field with other stuff, it just wouldn't work because they cost too much. So I think Verdandi is the main keeper people should be trying to play, and the main one they should be trying to push damage with, because it's just way too easy to recycle because of its low cost. And then for Rukh Egg, I've been waiting for the day where we get foil Rukh Eggs. I'm so happy. For anyone that hasn't noticed, like I'm pretty sure you have, but I'm like the biggest rarity whore. My cards just have to be like in max rarity, other than the Uber Rulers because I just can't afford them. But if you guys want to start like, you know, like a free vegan, get them some Ubers and like, you know, hook them up kind of deal, I'm totally open to that. If some people want to just start mailing me Ubers, I'll be like really happy. But no, like all jokes aside, I don't do that. I actually like, if anyone actually like knows me, I hate taking handouts. I don't like taking anything from anyone. I don't know why. I'm a very like work for your stuff kind of guy, so don't actually start like some kind of weird Kickstarter or anything to give me anything. I'm totally fine. I'll get them eventually. But yeah, foil Rukh Eggs are beautiful. When this card's sent to the graveyard, you get to search your deck for any red resonator, which is absolutely insane. I actually don't use this for any like specific beaters. I typically just get more Guineveres with this because people do notice that Guinevere is the key card in this deck, and they try to take it out quite frequently. A lot of times if let's say I have a Guinevere and a Rukh Egg, they try to kill Guinevere, I'll just sack herself to draw 2 and discard 1. If I draw into another Guinevere, I'll play that. Sometimes if they try to get rid of the Rukh Egg or something, like if they try to sign in the future, I'll just banish it with Guinevere so I get the effect instead of it getting removed from game. I'll search another Guinevere or search another Rukh Egg if I have a Guinevere, and then just set up the same field next turn and just continuously stall and thin through my deck until my graveyard's just really full, and then just completely turn the tide of the game by just going insane with Deathscythe and the Rulers. So it also searches Pricia, which is one of the most important cards, and some other kill cards in the deck. To Hera, I know like this is going to seem crazy because I was talking about how Hera is so important, and I have 2 and I'm running the three Moonshades for this card, but I can't, like, it really is that important. Like, I don't know why specifically in this deck I really like Hera, but it just feels really good. I think it's because in the worst case scenario I could just abuse my Deathscythes and draw for those and start thinning through those too. But I don't mind the 3 Moonshades for this either, because like I've always said, if I want to run a dual color cost, I like having 7 of a specific color, and I have Foment of the World Tree in this deck, and even if I only have 1, I still like fulfilling the 7 color requirement that I have kind of for myself. So I have the 4 Blasting Waves and the 3 Moonshades for Foment, and then it heals 800, so I heal off the damage. And then what people don't consider is in this deck, you can literally infinitely add Foment to your hand as many times as you want, as long as you go through Ifrit. And That's actually really insane. I fixed my hand and healed like 4 times in the game, and I was like, this is great. Every time I use Ifrit, I'm going to add Foment, and I'm going to add Pricia or Thunder, and you're eventually going to die, and I'm never going to die. So it just feels really, really fun. Like, I just love the way that card works in this deck. And then Pricia, one of the main actual pushing for damage cards, the 500 on this is really important as well, but you of course want to try to get the 700 in. A lot of times I'll just use this to crash into Tsukiyomis. It's why I felt this deck was needed Pricia so bad. Tsukiyomi shuts down Guinevere, which, like I already mentioned, is obviously the most important card in the deck, and you need a counter for Tsukiyomi. And Rapid Decay did seem like a pretty good option, but I didn't want to, like, if they summon a Tsukiyomi in Kaguya and they draw a card, and if I Rapid Decayed on my next turn, it's still a 1-for-1, but they drew a card off Tsukiyomi, so I'm kind of falling behind in terms of advantage. But with Pricia, if they have a Tsukiyomi and I attack into it with Pricia and kill the Tsukiyomi, they still drew the card, but I still have my Pricia. So when they use another card to then kill my Pricia, it's now finally even, and I made them use the same amount of cards to take out my card as I had to for theirs. And what makes it even better is the fact that you gain the 500 damage for Priscia's effect, which is insane. So if you guys haven't seen the Gilapis deck, Pricia has Swiftness, Target Attack, and First Strike. You can pay 1 green to give her Flying, which is like even crazier. And when she's put in the graveyard from your field, you do 500 damage to your opponent. So that's just nuts. Like I told you, like if your opponent is always forced to kill this because they don't want you to give it Flying, and if you have Guinevere on the field with this, you like plus so hard for them trying to remove your card. Like I can't get over how amazing that is. That's just like the best play ever. And then one Keeper of the Past. This is the one I said I only run 1 of. I do like it as an option when there are certain times where my opponent sets up, like, let's say they do have a Tsukiyomi and I don't have a Pricia, but I have a Blazer in my hand and I have like Guinevere and Rukh Egg on the field. When Tsukiyomi's in the chase, I'll just sack the Rukh Egg for Guinevere. I'll sack the Rukh Egg for Guinevere, and then I'll search this card, draw 2, and discard Blazer, and then on my immediate next turn while they're tapped out, I'll just summon this, remove the Blazer and like anything else, and just blow up the Tsukiyomi. So there's certain times where you can like see a certain card coming, and you can actually fill up your graveyard with pretty strong cards that'll just take out that creature anyway. And I mean, to do 800 damage to Tsukiyomi, because she's normally a 5/7, you only need 2 2-drops anyway, because she does 200 damage times the total cost of the remove from play cards in your graveyard. So if I remove like a Foment of the World Tree or something and like assign to the future, that's also 800 damage, and I can of course put those cards in there with Guinevere if I need them anyway. So, or like a Pricia and a 1-drop would even work. So this card's really good to counter certain cards. It also is just like a really good 3-drop removal. It's almost like a Carmilla where, you know, you just take a card out and then they have to deal with your card, but except you get to like you have to kind of control the damage it does. So I still really like it though. Like I don't think this card shouldn't see any play. I just think the 2-drop shouldn't see play. I don't know why, I just don't like that card. It's only good with the Time Emissary guy or like Demon Flame. But if you have that version of the deck, I think it's fine. But in this version, I just didn't like it. One Athena. Athena is kind of like my oops finisher. Like if I don't see what I need to see and I need to just put pressure on my opponent and just like finish them off, I'm just gonna use Athena. It's searchable by Rukh Egg, but I don't really like play this card over Pricia in any situation. I just have it here as like a oh my god finisher. It has Swiftness, and whenever damage is dealt to you, it gets 2+1/+1 counters, so it becomes a 9/9 if you take damage, and its effect is you can pay 1 red to deal 100 damage to both players. So I've actually like finished someone off with Athena's burn effect. Like they had like 400 life, and I had like 7 mana, and I just summoned it, and I was like, pay 4, and they just died. And so it's like, it has a lot of usages. You don't even have to always attack. Because of the spammable thunders, this is sometimes adds that like little bit of damage you need to finish someone off. So I really like having at least one, but I don't really like playing multiples of this card. I feel like it's always just been the perfect finisher, and it just kind of leave it at that. One Blazer. You can't not play Blazer in this deck. I love this card in this deck. It's just so scary because it's like in a situation where you completely exhaust your resource and they completely exhaust their resource, and both of you have just nothing left. Let's say even if both your Jailers are dead, you're like, alright, I have Blazer, and then you just bring out Blazer and start swinging. Like eventually they're gonna die, you know, like if every turn, even if they top deck like a Carmilla or a Stoning or anything like that, it's like, sure, next turn pay 5/7 Blazer, pay 5/7 Blazer, and then like there's been times where like not in this format yet, but in like older formats where Blazer was played, there was times where like I would have that happen to me and the opposing player was using Blazer, and it got to the point where we had 10 stones, so they would go like swing for with 5 mana, summon Blazer, swing. And I would be like stoning to death, and they would like pay 5 mana, summon Blazer, swing, and I was like, oh god, like it's doubling up now. I can't do anything. So this card is just really good. I mean, the fact that you can remove from play anything whenever you want is just completely perfect. There's no reason not to run this card, at least at like a 1. And then lastly, Susanowo, the Tempest Sword. This card is because Guinevere is really important in this format. Also in the mirror, it does work really good against another Blazer. It's searchable with Rukh Egg, and I always like throwing one in if I have Rukh Egg to search this out. It never like hinders me in any way. There's times where like I've paid just 6 to summon this too, where it's also just changes the complete tide of a game. So I just think it's a good card to have if you're playing red and if you can search it with Rukh Egg. So there's no reason not to run this. It punishes Guinevere. Even if they use Refuge like in my Koglia deck and they prevent the damage, you still get to swing for 1200 and they have to eventually deal with it like sometime. So if you force their Guinevere to block it and you just trade, that's also fine because like no matter how you look at it, you got rid of their Guinevere and you can start controlling the board with Pricia and Soulhunt again. For the spells, I have 4 Ifrit. This is the card that made me fall in love with this deck in the beginning. The only problem I have with this card is it says if your ruler is Alisaris, then you get to pay, you get to add 2 cards to your hand. If it wasn't, I would have played red Lumia so hard. I would have just played white-red Lumia with like infinite Sign of the Futures, infinite Thunders, and just spam the crap out of everyone. I would have loved that so much, but the fact that you can only add 2 cards to your hand by using this if you have Alisaris kind of killed that idea. So I'm sorry, Lumia. I'll avenge you one day. I will bring you back. But this card is just nuts. It lets you pay 2 red and you banish it to add 2 non-regalia cards from your remove from play to your hand. So you can't loop infinite Ifrits, but I never had to. I never really felt the need to play more than, like, see more than 4 of these, even after, like, 2 most of the time you're winning the game. So, it doesn't really make sense. Like, I don't even run Memory of Disappearance to, like, get this back. A lot of people have been saying, you know, even with just 1 memory, you can add Ifrit back, and then you add the memory back every time, and then you add the Ifrit back. And it's like, that loop's just, like, it's too costly. It doesn't really do enough when you could just, like, win the game anyway. It's kind of just, like, doing too much when you don't need to. Like 4 of this card is totally fine. You don't have to overextend, and it's just being able to add anything to your hand is insane. Like I said, like what I like about this the most is if I have a remove from play of like, you know, 1 Sign of the Future, 1 Thunder, or 2 Thunders, like a Pricia and all this stuff, and you have this open and you just pass turn with like 5 open, it's so scary because your opponent's like, I can't do anything because he's going to sack it and add Sign of the Future and Sign of the Future me. If I try to play small, he's going to sack it and add Thunder and Thunder my small creature. If I try to set up like 1 big monster, they can just sack it and Soul Hunt like the next turn. So this card is just absolutely insane. Like, I don't know how this ruler didn't get more attention. I feel like it's because he's a little hard to build. It did take a lot of practice with this deck. Originally, one of my teammates in Team Ogre, his name is Michael Song, he made like a blue version of this deck, and it's what made me fall in love with it in the beginning. So he kind of did inspire this in me too. Like, I always wanted to play him, but I was kind of in the same mindset of, oh, I don't know where to start. But after seeing, he was the one that showed me the whole Guinevere Deathscythe thing, because there was an interaction with Deathscythe I didn't really know. Which I'll explain when I get to Deathscythe. But yeah, so just shout out to him for actually like making it so that I pay enough attention to this ruler to really want to make a good version of it, because this deck is just awesome. And then the 4 Deathscythes. So what makes this card so great is it says your opponent's J-Ruler and your opponent's J-Ruler loses and cannot gain Imperishable or Swiftness. You never really play this card on the field until you've actually J-activated and you don't really feel the need to have it in the grave anymore. Sometimes I'll just put it on the field because it does make him 1200 if I tap it, and sometimes that extra +2/+2 really does help. And the continuous effect is you can banish 3 cards from the graveyard to add this card into your hand. And what makes this insane is 2 completely different things that I think just made this deck so viable. Is 1, Barrier of Shadows and Gil Lapis are continuous effects that say you have to pay 1 more to use activate effects on Regalias, and both of those continuous effects only apply to cards on the field. So continuous effects only apply on the field. So if you have Deathscythe in your graveyard, you can banish it to add it to your hand, and you would not have to pay 1 more for either Barrier of Shadows or Gil Lapis. So just in case you didn't get that, it's a continuous effect. Those both effects are continuous effects on the field, and they do not affect the effects in your graveyard or in your hand. The reason why discarding like Leviathan to produce red, or discarding Gleipnir or Hegemonica to draw cost 1 is because it's not the effect of the one in your hand, it's the effect of the one on the field that says you may discard another copy of this card. So it's still stopping the one on the field. There is no current regalia that works from the hand, like the effect itself happens from the hand, but Barrier of Shadows and Gil Lapis would not stop those either. So Deathscythe's the only card that gets around that so far, and only with the graveyard effect. And then the other thing that makes this card insane is where it says remove 3 cards from your graveyard from the game. That's a cost, and it's its activate effect. So you can essentially have one Deathscythe and chase it as many times as you want, as long as you have the cards to remove. So if I have 10 cards in my graveyard, and one of those is Deathscythe, that means I have 9 viable targets to remove. I can chase Deathscythe 3 times, remove all 9, and add that one Deathscythe to my hand. And with that one Deathscythe, you just remove 9 cards from your graveyard, which is like infinite bullets of material for Alisaris. And that's why I like this version so much more than the Keeper version. The Keeper version just feels so like you're hopefully setting up and your opponent's not really doing anything to stop you, and like, yeah, you're getting cards removed from play pretty quickly, but your monsters aren't really doing anything. This one gives you all the right cards to abuse, except for Split, which would be fun to abuse, but I didn't want to go that route because I didn't want to play like a complete burn deck. But like, it just seems so much more viable. Like, there's been so many times where I have, let's say, Deathscythe, Rukh Egg, and something like a Pricia in the graveyard, and I have Guinevere and Rukh Egg. During the end phase, I'll like banish the Rukh Egg for Guinevere, then chase Deathscythe, remove the now 3 cards in my graveyard because I banished one for Guinevere to add Deathscythe to my hand. You then search for Rukh Egg and then draw 2 and discard Deathscythe, and you just added like 3 new cards to your hand. So the fact that it makes Guinevere into like a draw 2 with absolutely no cost and feeds the remove from play cost for Alisaris is just absolutely ridiculous, and I think that version just seems so much more viable than playing a ton of keepers. And then the main card of the deck, which is Thunder. I don't know how many times I can count that I've killed people with this. Going back to that Agni Kai fight with Azula and Zuko in Avatar, like that part where he's like, what, no lightning today? Afraid I'll redirect it? And she's just like, I'll show you lightning, and she's all crazy. That's literally how I feel when I use this card. I'm just like zap, 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 and I'm just like doing thunderballs everywhere. And it's just so awesome, like it feels so cool. And I've never been the red ruler player, so like enjoying that is actually really, really fun. But like, I just like love just zapping everything. Oh, you have a Morgiana, dead. You have 1,000 life, double thunder, dead. Like, it just feels so good. Like, they just can't do anything to keep up, because even if they like eventually try to mitigate some of it with like Foment, or if they try to negate it, you just keep adding it to your hand. You're like, that's fine. Like, you're eventually gonna die. I'm not running out of any resource. And then 3 Soulhunts. Soulhunt is, like I said, completely insane. You have no monsters on the field, you can still use this card. The way it works is you apply as much of the effect as you can, so you don't have to banish the Resonator if you don't control it, but your opponent of course will when you activate it, and you both have to discard a card. And there's been so many times where I have like 6 cards in my hand, and like, I don't know, like maybe 7 cards in my graveyard, and Deathscythe's one of them, and I'll go activate Soulhunt with no cards in the no cards on the field. They have like 1 card in hand and 1 monster. And then they sack their monster and discard their only card, and I go banish 6 to add Deathscythe to my hand, discard Deathscythe, I had no monsters. Like, you just remove 2 cards off your opponent's field for absolutely nothing. Like, you discarded a Deathscythe and then you're just gonna get it back later. Like, this card is absolutely nuts in this deck. Like, and the fact that you can add it to your hand as many times as you want, it works really good like first turn too. If I have, let's say, Deathscythe and Soulhunt in my opening hand, and my opponent's playing Kaguya and they go first, and they go like summon Moonbreeze Elf or Morgiana and pass, and you just open, tap for a black-red, use Soulhunt, discard just Deathscythe, and you have to sack nothing, and they sack their Morgiana or Moonbreeze Elf and discard a card, it makes you catch up so quickly and stops them so much. Like, it's so much more effective than just the first turn Thunder. Not that that's like a bad play, but this is the play you really want to be hoping for if you're going second, and it just helps you catch up so much. This card is nuts in this deck. And then Sign to the Future. I still like having one. I feel like everyone's going to eventually get mad at me because I think this is like the 5th deck I put this week that had this. Actually, I think the Fairy deck didn't have this with Yggdrasil, but I love this card. You know, don't bug me. Don't like get mad at me for it. It's just too important. If your opponent overextends, you can remove 2 of them. And then if they underextend, you just Soulhunt. It's like, it's just like, they just can't do anything. It's so fun. It's not that the deck is unbeatable or anything, but like having all these options just feels really, really good. And so I just love Sign of the Future. And then Foment of the World Tree, Infinite Life Heal is always fun. Also, you always have a ton of cards in your hand in this deck, so being able to just put as many of them back to get a whole new hand feels really nice. You can draw into a bunch of like Soul Hunts or anything like that if you really feel like you need it, or if you're not seeing certain cards, you can fix your hand. There's also been like a couple times where I just didn't see a Guinevere for whatever reason for like forever, even though I was thinking through my deck with like Verdandis and whatnot, and I had Mulligan 5, and I'll see a Foment and I'll just like Foment 5 and then draw the perfect hand, and I'm like, okay, I'm in this. Like, you're gonna get thundered now. So it just feels really good. I love this card. I think it's just like one of the most defining green cards you've ever had in the entire game. And then one Flame King Shout. This is one of those cards where I just like having one of. I've noticed that every time I play 2 of this card, I see it either too early or something, and I just end up hating it. It always feels really good at 1. I can even discard it early if I want to add it back to my hand, but because I didn't have all the light for Sign to the Future, I decided to only run 1 sign and 1 of this, because it also works really, really good with Pricia. An important note with Pricia too is if by any chance you Flame King Shout a Pricia into the field and you wipe your opponent's whole field except for like except for like their Guinevere, it doesn't do enough damage to Guinevere, unfortunately, where Pricia can kill it, but with Athena, you can attack into Guinevere, and if you have the 1 to pay, you can buffer to 9/9, and she'd be able to trade with the Guinevere, and you just completely wipe their board for 1 flame and the Athena. Or you can use, in general, like if you have mana open for Thunder and Pricia is exact damage to kill Guinevere, and because she has first strike, if you Thunder it and then attack into it, and they have no blockers, you just kill the Guinevere with Pricia, and you don't have to lose the Pricia. So there's been times where I've had like 4 mana and I've played against like an Alice Rule kind of deck where they just have a bunch of weenies and a Guinevere, and I just go like Flame King Shout, everything dies, summon Pricia, attack Guinevere, Thunder it. It kind of sucks because it's only at like 100 left, so I wish I didn't have to waste the Thunder, but it is an option other than just killing the weenies. So it's nice to see all the like little numbers add up. Plus, worst case scenario, if your opponent is getting a full board kind of mid game, you can always just flip J activate and wipe their whole board with Alisaris, and them knowing that really slows down the way they have to play too. If you ever have 6 mana and you can flip for 2 and God out for 4, that's going to wipe an entire field, so they have to be really, really cautious about that. And the fact that you can just use that set whenever you want really helps get all those cards removed from play too. Lastly, for the side deck, this wouldn't be a real Agni Kai if we didn't have generations worth of fire rulers ready to be battling it out with all of your opponents. So I actually sided an insane amount of rulers for like a ton of different reasons. I have Melgis sided because against the Red Rush matchup, I really like the way Melgis works. I think the fact that he can kill most other red rulers because of his first strike and his speed, the way his God Art is just really, really good, and his first effect can just do so much damage by banishing like your like little Rukh Eggs and stuff. It just feels really powerful. It stops like Bahamut and those kind of decks. Melgis just always had a good matchup against that deck, and I just love having the option to him. I have Sylvia. This is the one I find myself siding into the most because it stays the same kind of mid-range kind of aspect. You have to remember though that if you do play Sylvia, your Verdani still get to be 10/10 if you remove enough cards, but the Verdanis won't have like swiftness or anything, so you can still set it up and there's still big beaters, but you still want to play really mid-rangey. Don't like overextend too much. Bahamut, because against a deck that doesn't have answers to this early game, if I side into this and just flip it off like a Rukh Egg, you're pretty much just going to die. There's a lot of decks that can't do anything to Bahamut, and it's kind of crappy and to know that, but most of those decks side appropriate for Bahamut. But if you're using Alisaris and you switch into Bahamut and they didn't obviously switch into anything like Bahamut hate related because they didn't see it coming, it's going to give you an instant game 2 win. And especially if you lost game 1, it helps you kind of catch up and then maybe switch out even game 3, and if you won game 1, that's just an easy match win. And then lastly, Kayn. Kayn's actually really good against like fairies. After playing that deck yesterday and realizing how scary it was and how just actually terrified him now of like Yggdrasil fairies, I'm like scared of going to my locals and someone going like, hey, nice deck list, and then like they flip the ruler in a tree and I'm like and then they like tap for a stone and it's a Windspark and I'm like, no, it's happening, I'm gonna die. And so I figured Kayn would be good against it because I could shoot all the little weenies with his effect and Leviathan and just like kind of board wipe. And that's why I sided the 4 Levitans, because if you switch to any of these rulers, you just switch out the Ifrits for 4 of these, and you kind of get the swiftness and everything that it applies, plus the boost to all of their effects. Most of them deal damage, so actually all of these deal damage, so Levitan pumps that up as well. I have 4 Demon Flame sided. I actually like switching these out for the Thunders if I switch into any of these rulers, except for maybe Bahamut. But the reason why I like it is because your Verdandis, you're not so focused on making them big anymore. You also don't always have all the mana to be able to spam them or recycle them. And having like 100 Verdandis that just block something and then you Demon Flame the target could be potentially really good because you don't have as much burn with these rulers and you're relying on them attacking to get damage in. The Thunder doesn't always help push for that final amount of damage anymore, so I actually really like the way Demon Flame feels in that deck without Alisaris. And then the 3 Barrier of Shadows, because I don't want to not have access to this if I am playing against a really Regalia heavy deck. I was really worried that because I don't main it, they're going to try to take advantage of that. They might side into something, or if I think they're going to side into something that needs a lot of either Regalia control or like a lot of emphasis on their ruler, I wanted to have access to this. So I figured like I don't really need the space because the deck does play really well, and the rush rulers really help beat a lot of decks that don't see them coming. So I figured I'd use the space and just going really hard on the Barrier of Shadows because I don't want to get like Valentina 2.0'd or like anything that's just going to kill me really quick. It's not fun to play against those decks, so I wanted access to Barrier of Shadows. Plus Reflect Rush is actually like a real thing. That deck is really strong and their Pricias will beat my Pricias. So game 2 I want to be able to at least stop the Change the World from going crazy, and Reflect from being able to just deactivate infinite times for free. So I thought the Barrier was actually really good in the side. So that was my Alisaris deck profile. I hope you guys did enjoy it. This is by far the deck I had the most fun with, so I really hope people actually go out of the way to play it because it is a ton of fun. At least make it on like Untap or something and play it because it does take a lot to get used to, but it is, like I said, just ridiculously fun. Enjoy just burning your opponents down and being able to spam Thunders and having anime scenes in your head the way I do. If you guys haven't watched that fight, like you really should. I'm actually going to put it in the description. Like I need people to see this because it's so great. So in the description, I will have a link to that Azula versus Zuko fight. Even if you haven't watched Avatar, just watch it and just enjoy the fact that you get to be like this insane powerhouse and you're like a psychopath that just loves blasting stuff. It's going to be a ton of fun. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you do because I still have a ton of deck profiles getting revamped really soon. There's also, if you guys like want to see a specific something, just leave it in the comment section below. I want to hear if there's anything you guys want to see. So leave any comments if you have any or any questions about the deck. Make sure to subscribe and I will definitely catch you guys next time.